Well, firstly, thank you for the opportunity to be here today with you. And I wanted to start by just briefly letting everybody know who the WPO are. And so we are a federation of packaging organisations from all over the world, and we have 63 member countries at the moment. And we're here to help you to design better packaging for more people. So when we're talking about sustainability and sustainable packaging design, there really isn't a silver bullet. And it's really important for everybody to understand that there are multiple pieces of the jigsaw puzzle. And the loudest piece of the jigsaw puzzle at the moment is extended producer responsibility. And that's where we put the responsibility for what packaging and materials are being put out onto the market back on the brand. And at the moment, the very loud conversation around extended producer responsibility is in Europe. And so the European states have been developing a packaging and packaging waste regulation, or the PPWR, and it really is taking center stage globally at the moment. And we are waiting to see what their packaging designers will look like and hopefully implement some of the design standards within our own countries and regions. And so a part of this discussion is also eco-modulation. And eco-modulation is very much about incentivizing companies, brands that actually are designing packaging and materials that are in fact recycle ready, recyclable, and recoverable. And so if you haven't looked at the PPWR, we would encourage you to start looking at some of the regulations, because you may be able to take some of these and implement them in your own countries as well. And some of the core goals of the PPWR is reduction of packaging waste, cost-efficient promotion of the circular economy for packaging, and also promoting recyclability and the use of recycled materials in packaging. There are many different areas and focuses within the PPWR. And again, we would encourage you to have a look at them, but it's very much around reduction and prevention of waste at the start. And then also looking at things like incorporating recycled content, developing more improved reuse and refill solutions, eliminating single-use problematic materials, reducing the amount of virgin materials wherever possible, and making sure that the packaging is in fact recyclable and can be collected, sorted, reprocessed, and recycled in the country that it's sold in. And incorporating recycled content is a really critical area in this, in that we need to make sure that we're reducing the amount of virgin materials, and we also need to make sure that we're using the materials that we currently have in our countries over and over again as many times as possible. And then we need to look at things like reducing single-use plastic and eliminating problematic materials. And so the United Nations have developed the Global Plastics Pollution Treaty, where they are going to globally mandate rules to ensure that there is an end to plastic pollution, and it also enabling the industrial transformation towards a circular economy. And there are 7 areas under consideration within the Global Plastics Treaty, but very much around the discussions that we already have, ensuring that we are avoiding single-use plastic, we're phasing out problematic materials, we're really focused on eliminating chemicals of concern, focusing on the development or advancement of reuse and refill, and looking at improvement of collection and recycling rates, and developing extended producer responsibility systems. And one evolution that we do believe will happen is that with the development of a global regulation under the Plastics Pollution Treaty, you will see less localized single-use plastic regulations, because each country that signed on to the Global Plastics Pollution Treaty will have a responsibility to implement those regulations in their country. And container deposit return and earn schemes, depending on where you are in the world, are a really important area for allowing access to quality feedstock, materials and packaging that can be put back into recycled content, that can be put back into packaging, but also about minimizing litter in a country and incentivizing consumers to come on the journey with us to recycle their packaging. Product stewardship programs are really critical as well. And this is where we try and capture and reprocess and recycle valuable materials wherever possible, keeping materials out of landfill wherever possible, and developing a really expansive product stewardship program to be able to pick up things like coffee cups, coffee capsules, blister packs, and be able to extract any valuable materials that we can out of this packaging. Soft plastics and flexibles is always a very challenging area around the world, but we are seeing more and more return to store programs where consumers bring their soft plastics back and return it into store. We're seeing more and more pilot programs for curbside collection, bright coloured bags, where the consumer gets to put their soft plastics into that bag, put it into the curbside collection, and then it goes off for reprocessing. And we're also seeing the advancement of chemical and advanced recycling. A lot of infrastructure and facilities are being built at the moment in many corners of the world, and that's very much around the circularity of packaging and making sure that we can use those materials over and over again and put them back into packaging wherever possible. On-pack and off-pack labeling is a critical piece of the puzzle for the consumers. We want them to be innovative, intuitive, and to be able to help the consumer easily understand, how do I separate all my components and which bins do I put them in? We want these programs to be honest, science-based, evidence-based, and intuitive for the consumers. And then the evolution with a lot of these on-pack labeling programs is the addition of an app, a consumer-facing app, that can scan the packaging and tell them whether they need to put the packaging or some of the separable components either into their curbside bin, their non-recyclable bin, or even moving away from home collection. So identifying a local away from home collection so that they can drop it into store or over into the drop-off point to again make sure that they're recycling it appropriately. And then a very important piece of the puzzle is reuse and refill, an extremely underutilized design area at the moment, but hopefully with the regulations coming out of the EU, we will see a lot more advancement in this space. One of the challenging things is that so many people around the world need to know where they start with their packaging design because they really don't have any idea where to start. And we need to look at more global harmonized design standards and encouraging companies to really stop and rethink the way they design their packaging and take this as an opportunity to redesign it and to focus within the waste hierarchy on reduction and reused first, and then to ensure that it has the lowest environmental impact and it can, in fact, be captured, sorted, recycled, reprocessed in the country that it's sold in. And so there are sustainability design rules that people can follow, particularly around making sure that packaging is fit for purpose and functional first, and that you can ensure that it is recycle ready, it's recyclable, it has the lowest environmental carbon footprint wherever possible, and it can be emptied so that there's no product waste. And then there are 10 fabulous sustainable packaging design guidelines that you can print off and put on in your office and to follow within not only your primary, but your secondary and tertiary packaging, and see how many of these 10 guidelines you can follow within all areas of your business. And then the WPO wanted to make sure that we also contributed to assisting our members. And so we developed the packaging design for a recycling guide, which is really intuitive, easy to use, has a traffic light system. It has all packaging materials, all components. It covers inks, adhesives, it covers caps and closures, and not just the bottles. And it helps everybody to design their packaging to be recycle ready for state-of-the-art materials recovery facilities. And even if you don't have state-of-the-art materials recovery facilities, that's okay. If you design your packaging to be ready for when that infrastructure and facilities come, you know that you're already one step ahead. And so it has a traffic light system and it helps guide you with the way you're designing your packaging, and it will help to tell you where you sit, whether you sit in the green, the amber, or the red, and it will also guide you on how to improve your design to make sure that you move into the green. We have 14 translations of the guide so far. They are all available on the WPO website. They are all free of charge. We encourage you to download them, share them. If there's a language missing that you would like to support, please reach out to me. We want this guide to be accessible to everyone in every language around around the world, because it's so important that everyone has some consistent design standards. And when the EU recently released their design recommendations, they also acknowledged the Global Packaging Design for Recycling Guide as one of the best for covering all materials and all substrates globally, which we're extremely proud of. And so when we're asking people where do we start, they have no ideas. Another area is waste stream mapping tools. And so waste stream mapping tools is that deep dive into the local country recyclability. And so if you are exporting into countries, you need to understand the recyclability of the materials that you're exporting over there. And so these waste stream mapping tools that are, again, all available on the WPO website are there to help guide you on what is recyclable and what is not recyclable in those countries. We have how to use guides, which are really important for you to understand. And then another area that's really important when we're talking about sustainability and often gets overlooked is looking at how you design optimum pack design, particularly if you're working in food and beverage, because we don't want to underpack and waste the food. We also don't want to overpack and waste the packaging materials. And this is where the Safe Food Packaging Design guidelines come in, where they can help you, particularly if you're working in food. You can follow these 5 guidelines and all of the resources and checklists that are available to be able to design your packaging with the lowest environmental impact, but to also ensure that you are protecting and preserving the product and being able to design it in a way that it can transport the product all the way to the household, and that it's not minimizing food loss and waste across that value chain. So we really encourage you to have a look at Safe Food Packaging Design Guidelines, as well as the 10 Sustainable Packaging Design Guidelines. And so circular economy for packaging is all encompassing. As you can see, there's just so many moving pieces of this puzzle. A lot's happening around the world, and you do need to try and keep up wherever you can. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're designing our waste at the start, that we're designing with the end in mind, and whether it can be reused and become circular. We want to harmonize packaging design standards across the world, make sure that all our packaging is recycle ready, eliminate chemicals of concern wherever possible, reduce virgin materials as much as possible, eliminating problematic materials that just cannot be picked up, are of low value, and are challenging for materials recovery facilities. And we also want to make sure that we're reusing materials as much as possible for as long as possible. We need to make sure that packaging is kept out of landfill. It's kept out of the waterways and the environment, and we need to make sure that we stay within our planetary boundaries. And so thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you today. Should you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out, and thank you again.